everyone. This is a Trigger project, the EU-funded project designed to provide EU institutions with knowledge and tools to enhance their activeness, effectiveness, and influence global governance. One of the main parts of the work we have developed this year is a scenario building process. Almost 1 year ago, we have met for the foresight workshop, and out of these results, we built the scenarios. However, as we all know, COVID-19 crisis came and impacted a lot the current situation. So to validate the scenarios and to adapt them to the new situation, we have run online foresight workshops this summer. And today we will talk with one of the participants of this workshop, with Gaby Umbach. And she is a part-time professor at the European University Institute, Director of Global START and Trigger Consortium member, leading the Trigger Research Pillar on Global Governance. Hello, Gaby.
Hi, Svetlana.
Gaby, we would like to talk with you about this COVID crisis, and that we know it has dramatic impact on every aspect of our life and society. Of course, it also impacts the capability of institutional system to cope with the consequences of crisis. Under these conditions, of course, strategic foresight should be the primary tool to devise resilient responses to the shock and to elaborate post-COVID new normal scenarios. Could you please share with us in these terms your experience with testing the trigger scenarios in the summer digital workshop, and if you had useful insights from these discussions?
Thank you very much, Svetlana, and thank you very much for having me on that format. Actually, I do think what one of the main takeaways in terms of the content that we discussed was that we can reflect together jointly on optional corridors for policies. And that was a really important experience for me, so that we don't need to think policies as a continuum, as a path dependency of past decisions, but we can indeed broaden the range of trajectories that we reflect together. That's from the content side. And from the format, from the method side, what I took away was indeed that it offered a room for a brainstorming exercise that involved so many experts, and that made it possible to tap into this entire expertise in a group that was very open to reflect beyond what is there in their policy repertoires at the current moment. So it gave us a moment of also a break from the daily political and academic work to reflect about possibilities and future options rather than on concrete policy solutions that were required at the current moment.
Thank you so much, Gaby. And Gaby, could you also please let us know a bit about the newly initiated Berlin Future Strategy Group at the Institute of European Politics in Berlin, and how the trigger scenarios are being utilized to further the strategic foresight work in these instances?
With great pleasure, Svetlana. So that was a bit of a coincidence. We started discussing at the Institute for European Politics in Berlin, of which I am a board member. We started discussing at the beginning of the year that the colleagues there wanted to integrate something of a more longer-term trajectory discussion group to the Berlin landscape. The Institute was founded in the late 1950s. And is one of the longest standing German institutes working on EU policies and foreign policies. And it's a really established part of the Berlin landscape. And they felt that exactly foresight, future studies were something that they needed to integrate into the discussion. And hence we started brainstorming on how to do that. And coming from the trigger experience that I had in the November workshops and in the online workshops that we just had, when we discussed that further, it occurred to me that actually it would be a wonderful idea for both the trigger project and the Institute to be able to combine the efforts. So the good thing I think that we have here is that the Institute in Berlin offers Trigger and the scenarios that have been developed in Trigger the opportunity for a policy relevant use case. We have gathered a group of 29 practitioners from ministries, civil society, but also academics. From the ministry side, they are mostly engaged in foresight and strategic planning units. So we will have indeed those from the Foreign Ministry, Ministry of Finances, but also the Health Ministry, who reflect on possible futures and possible policies. And I do indeed think that for Trigger, it's an amazing case of, while we develop it, we can plan and see how policymakers use them and work with them. What we will do in the strategy group is go a bit beyond what we did in Trigger. So we are introducing the scenarios as we develop them in Trigger. We will discuss in the first workshop on the role of the EU in the scenarios, and we will take it from there to offer policymakers and practitioners the opportunity to reflect more on the future role of the EU in the global governance scenarios, but also on German priorities for such an EU. So we will take it in a way a step further down, nationalize, localize the scenarios a bit, and offer this as a backdrop for policymakers to reflect on German positions in view of EU politics of the future.
Thank you, Gaby. And are there any specific policy implications these scenarios present to us? And how might your suggest these and other policies be approached with a view to alternative futures?
Yeah, I do think as a general methodological part or instrument rather, they indeed broaden the policy corridors that we can reflect in. So they offer us to reflect about potential unintentional or intentional coincidence or developments that particular changes in variables of global governance could entail. And as such, I do think they offer us a mature opportunity for policy development and also for establishing the alternatives while we develop the policies, and not as we learn from failure of implementation of policies. So I do indeed think, and that is, as I understand, also the motivation of more and more national ministries taking up foresight and future studies, that is one of the advantages to learn while you develop rather as to learn from failure.
Thank you very much, Gaby, for this interesting talk. And I'm glad to say that the scenarios are at the final stage of revision, and they will be able to download them from the Trigger's website, and we will share them on Trigger Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you again, Gaby, and goodbye.
Thanks, Svetlana. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.